in the community with adult customers, which I'm very much enjoying.
Julie, could you just please just say that little part again, because I think that we had an issue with the mic there. So if you could just say that again, sorry, but that was a really great introduction. I heard it. So yeah, if you could just please say that again for me.
Okay, yeah. I've worked for National Careers Service since it was born in this guise in 2012. I started off as a helpline advisor on the National Careers Helpline, working initially with young people. And then last year, I made the move into the local face-to-face service. So I work mainly in the South Tyneside and Wearside area, and I'm absolutely loving it.
Brilliant, brilliant. So how was that transition going from one to the other to face? Was that how was that for you? It, like kind of adjusting to that, and was it different from what you were doing before?
It was very different because when I left the last company, I'd moved from the frontline help desk service to being a first line careers advisor into doing promotional activities for the service. So I did a lot of behind the scenes work. I did some presentations at the likes of skill shows, careers fairs. I made a lot of presentations via WebEx and Skype-based systems, and basically did a lot of speaking in front of big groups of people.
Right.
This has actually made me more nervous than that, though,
That's crazy.
because then I have to look at my own face and think, yeah, not keen.
Yeah, I remember I've had to do that a couple of times, and it always gets me every time I do it. I feel like it never gets any easier.
Mm.
So yeah, I commend you for that, because I that's something that for me, I usually I struggle with that sometimes. Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, so that's awesome. So you're saying that regionally it's South Tyneside and Sunderland. You cover like how like wide stretching is that? Like, do you go to kind of like, so that's I'm guessing like South Shields and obviously Sunderland Centre. How far out does that go?
Yeah, it's basically the whole of Sunderland. So, you're incorporating the city, the job centres we work with in the city in Southwick, in Houghtonleigh Spring. I actually deal with mainly South Tyneside. So my job centre that I can normally be found in is Jarrow. I do a lot of work in South Shields as well. But the company that I work for, which is Education Development Trust, we manage the National Careers Service contract for the whole of the North East
Oh
and
wow,
Cumbria,
brilliant,
and actually in Yorkshire and the Humber as well. So
brilliant, brilliant.
pretty wide ranging.
Absolutely. So what kind of things do you guys like? Obviously, there's a bunch of different stuff, but what kind of like what would be a normal day for you guys? So say what would you kind of roles would you do, and what kind of stuff? And that's a very broad
Well,
question, so I know that's a difficult answer, but just try as best as you can.
yeah. Now, if you'd asked me that question 3 months ago, Daniel, I could have answered you in a very different way. Because my normal day on a Friday would be me heading off to South Shields Job Centre
Right.
for around about 8:45 and setting up in the desk that I have there upstairs, and probably having a diary of about 4 or 5 clients who I would advise on a one-to-one basis. So they'll have been referred to me for a variety of reasons. It might be to help them build a CV. They might never have done that before. I might be working with them to explore different career paths. They may be quite young and on their first steps, really, into the world of work. So sometimes what happens is that my colleague Lindsay, who works mainly in South Shields, she will have done, say, a workshop with a group of 18 to 24-year-old young people. And that might have sparked their interest in something and they've requested a one-to-one. So it might be about telling them about further ed options, about apprenticeships, skills tests as well that they could do to find out what they'd be most suited to. So although there is kind of a pattern to each day, it's not the same in that you just
Mm-hmm.
don't know who's going to be sitting in front of you.
Right. Of course. So it depends on the person, and I guess like kind of what they're after, and things like that. You were saying
Yeah.
when people do like was it, I can't remember the exact word you used, it was a skills test, did you say, to kind of decide which kind of skill they would be best suited to, is that right? Which job they would be best
Yeah.
suited to, sorry. How would that go?
Yeah.
How does that work?
Right. Well, there's a number of skills tests that you
Mm-hmm.
can do, and they're all based on loosely on broad psychological principles of, the way that careers advice was kind of developed from start of the last century, really, in
Wow, yeah.
terms of matching people to jobs based on their personalities, where they'd be happiest, their skills and interests. On the National Careers Service website, there are two really good tests that anyone can do. So we have a skills assessment called Discover Your Skills and Careers. Now, that's something that I can quite easily go through with a customer in the course of a session because it only takes about 10 minutes. And it's one of those tests where there are no right or wrong answers, really. It's just based on how you feel about the particular question. So you would be asked to rate a statement from strongly agree through to strongly disagree. Yeah. So it might be something like, I enjoy talking in front of a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
So depending on how comfortable you are with that, it might then start ruling out or ruling in various job options.
It's really interesting. I think that's good as well because so I'm guessing it kind of not judges, but kind of assesses their personality traits or their personality kind of style to see what kind of things they'd be more suited for. And I think that's really cool because then they can kind of sometimes as well. I'd imagine that people come to you and they don't really know what they want to do. So I think that once that they've actually had that kind of an assessment in a way, then they'll have a better idea. They'll be like, oh, I actually am this kind of person and I'll maybe be more suited to this perhaps.
Yeah, I think so. And to be honest, I see far more people who don't really know what they want to do or have ended up, as they call it, falling into a job when they left school. And so a lot of the customers who were more my age, and please don't ask what that is.
I would never
but let's
do such
just
a
say
thing.
no, a gentleman never asks and a lady never tells,
that's
apparently.
It, yeah.
But what I found is that a lot of these customers, many years ago may have left school and they had a job lined up. Their parents have said, oh, there's a job in such and such a factory, there's a job down the pit, whatever.
Yeah.
They've done that for so many years. Then for whatever reason, that job's not there anymore. And they don't really know where to turn because that's just what they've always done.
For sure.
They've never done anything like analyze their skills or think, well, actually, what sort of environment do I really enjoy?
So do you think that stuff like that is kind of like, I think that's a really good example. So, someone like that who's been kind of doing something their whole life or something, it's good to have those kind of things in place to kind of say, listen, there's like other things that you can do maybe, and maybe if we kind of look at some of the options out there, then there's different kind of opportunities that there is there for you, right? Would you agree?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I had a client once who had worked, I think, nearly all of his working life in a factory on a production line. And although the hours were steady, the job was fairly steady, he felt that, I don't know whether it was the time of life, but he felt, I just can't do this anymore. And he made quite a radical detour actually into the care sector.
Wow.
Something that, we would never, ever have imagined, but he absolutely loved it. And within a year, he got to be team leader.
Wow.
And now they're talking about putting him through management qualifications because he is it suits his personality. He's kind of that very calm, very encouraging, very supportive kind of guy. And he's really found his niche, probably something he'd never have considered when he left school.
Wow, that's absolutely awesome. So how do you kind of identify that if they come to you, and would you maybe make that suggestion, or do you think would it be them, or is it just something that you guys work together to kind of find out, what they would be maybe best at, or what opportunities that they've got? How does that really work? Like, especially if they're moving into something different.
With me, it depends on a lot of things. Now, I have a kind of a secret weapon in my careers toolkit because for many years, I was a qualified counsellor.
Cool.
So I worked one-to-one with a lot of different people. And I still think I'm quite adept at picking up clues from little things that they say.
For sure.
Just picking up on a phrase or a word or reflecting back something that they've said that maybe doesn't match what their face looks like when they've said it, and they might say, oh, well, I've always done this, or, well, I wanted to be a nurse, but you need qualifications for that because I like helping people. And then I'll think, okay, well, let's go back to that helping people. There are lots more ways that you can help people than by becoming a nurse. But if you want to become a nurse, let's look at how you might get into that.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think another way is when you do something like one of the skills tests, you've then got some tangible results that you can give to this person. And it might be coming out, it might be, driving that person down a route that they hadn't considered. But
Definitely.
they've answered the questions in a way that leads to that. So then you can say, is this a surprise to you? Is
Yeah,
this something that you'd like to explore? So it's a really useful tool in that respect.
that's pretty cool, and I guess that kind of gives you an advantage in a way, right? With obviously you having experience being a counselor. I guess when you are doing one-to-one stuff with people, that kind of it helps you a lot more because obviously you've got kind of an experience of how people are and how to talk to people really more than anything, right? So
Yeah.
I,
And I think, I don't ever want to give the impression that I'm an expert on a particular career. I think for me, it's about firstly making a bond with people, establishing some rapport, you know, because I don't think you can really do anything successfully with a customer until you can bond with them,
yeah,
maybe have a bit of a laugh,
yeah,
make them feel relaxed, especially with a lot of people that, bear in mind, it might be their first time that they've ever been into anywhere like a job center.
mm,
And they can find that a really difficult environment. They've not been used to the benefit system,
yeah,
they don't know what to do. They feel very much, and I hear this from customers time and time again. They say, well, I've never not worked. I don't know what to do with myself.
yeah.
So sometimes it's about just spending a little bit of time, reflecting that back to them and just, listening to their story before you can do any sort of more practical work, really.
Definitely, yeah, and I think that's a good point. And yeah, especially if it's a new environment to them, then I think that kind of having that rapport, it'll allow them to actually, to trust you, and then it can maybe open up about stuff because obviously I think, especially with long-term unemployment, you get a lot of um, mental health issues. Sometimes there's a correlation there. Obviously, that's not always the
Yeah.
case, but there is like a lot, obviously a large percentage. So I think that when you've got things like that as well, that's something that you kind of need to be wary of and kind of help to kind of aid them, in a direction that's going to help them, but obviously being understanding at the same time, right?
Yeah, definitely. And the good thing is that we're very lucky enough to have strong links with some brilliant partner organisations, yours included, so that if we do have a customer who is a very long way away from maybe re-entering the workplace, then we can look at what small steps we
Right.
can put in place to help them. And that might be suggesting that there's another organization who can actually better support them in the initial stages to just build their confidence, perhaps.
Yeah, and I guess that's where kind of we come in a little bit.
Yeah,
Obviously, with some of the stuff that we do at Media Savvy, that's kind of the one of our key, well, one of our key aims is to kind of help our learners find employment, and so yeah, that's where we kind of can help with stuff like that because we can there's obviously all of the skills that we can offer them, which is
yeah,
anything from health and fitness to kind of something with digital imaging or like video editing if it's a course I'm teaching. It could be anything like that, but then at the same time there's also that element which is what we're kind of talking about is just putting them in an environment where there's other people, putting them in an
yeah,
environment socially where they've got a class at at 9 o'clock, and then it finishes at 1 and they've got to be there for that time. And it's like giving them a bit of structure as well, because there's some people that just they're completely absent of that. And then being able to be in that session, it helps them kind of get on that path to building a routine again as well.
yeah, that's right. And like you said, it's a lot about structure and it's a lot about just, having that routine of, you need to be here to start class at 9 or half 9 or whatever. And it's building those employability muscles, I
Yeah,
suppose,
that's a good point.
you know.
And I mean as well, aside from that as well as also kind of we've got our we're a digital based company, and then a lot of it is art based, but then we've also got like kind of the embedded learning as well, which we obviously have maths and English, which is like the fundamental skills which are kind of embedded
Yeah,
into all of our learning as well. So there's obviously that factor which is kind of aside from the art and all and things we teach like that, but then also the kind of fundamental skills that we're embedding like English and embedding maths into it as well to kind of help upscale their skills in that way too.
Yeah, and that's one of our focuses because one of what we call the priority groups of customers for National Careers Service are to support people who don't have, for example, a level 2 qualification in English and maths.
Yeah,
And that could be something like, as you said, a literacy and numeracy qualification. But it's just kind of explaining the importance of those qualifications to open up your prospects really, and then be able to maybe look at more advanced training courses or just open up the range of jobs that you could consider, with those building blocks in place.
definitely, definitely, yeah. And yeah, I agree, and also I think that that's an essential thing as well, especially with something like long-term employment, is having something there in the interim that's going to set them on that path to kind of work in the way back there, because sometimes it's not just like people can't just go into employment like immediately. There
No.
needs to be like some kind of process in a way.
Yeah.
So
I
yeah,
mean, I always say to my clients, and I'm very fond of kind of using metaphors and storytelling. And I always say, look, if you've never flown anywhere on a plane before, would you get on a plane and fly to New Zealand?
yeah,
No, I don't think you would.
good
You
point.
might start with maybe even going in a flight simulator or just
Yeah,
having a little nip down from, say, Newcastle to Heathrow or
yeah, yeah,
something,
yeah.
or, take a friend with you, see what it's like. You wouldn't go that whole distance when you've never done something before. And it's the same with going back into the workplace. We'll say, well, look, baby steps. I'm very fond of saying that as
I
well.
agree. I
You know,
totally agree. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So your first baby step could be just, getting some new structure, as you've said, Daniel, in your life. So that structure might be introduced in that course, and maybe you're looking at something that's maybe just 5 or 7 days that they have to commit to, so that you're not
hmm,
on something for like 12 or 15 weeks and it might
yeah,
overwhelm them.
definitely.
So, it's all about just gauging, you know, what they think they're capable of doing at the moment and then gradually ramping it up.
Definitely, and yeah, and that's why obviously with kind of our courses, as well as the things like we've got obviously the health and fitness aspect of stuff, and we've got a lot of accredited courses, so it's like you getting that qualification, but then there's also the stuff that like the routine, which is almost equally as essential alongside
Yeah.
that, and being in an environment where they can talk to other people and the sense of community, and also something else which I think is greatly important is kind of forming good habits and hobbies as well. So it's like
Yeah.
if that stimulates an interest in somebody to make them want to go home and work on Photoshop, then the one factor of that is that they could start to monetize that eventually down the line if they become good enough at it. And then the other factor
Yeah.
of that is that they're forming a positive habit, which is making them be more productive. And then when they're more productive, they might feel like they're confident enough to work again because they think, I'm making changes in my life, so putting them on the right path, so to speak.
Yeah. And they're also getting those really valuable digital skills too, because obviously the
Yeah,
better developed your digital skills are, the better you can organize your job search, the better you can present yourself, do your CV. You'll not be thrown by things like video interviews, which I
yeah,
think will start to become much more the norm.
yeah.
So a very useful way to spend time, preparing for employment.
Exactly right. Exactly right. So I remember one time that I was in when I very first started with Media Savvy. I was volunteering with them, and I remember being in a session, and I'm sure that the National Career Service came to the session, and
Hmm.
I think that they gave a little presentation, and in the presentation it wasn't exactly the skills test, but it was something quite similar, and
Hmm.
it was kind of identifying different personality types and kind of what things that you may be suited for. And I thought that
Yeah.
that presentation was really good, and we each got like a little booklet, and then it kind of explained a bit about like these kind of different types. And I thought that was really good because it seemed like everyone was kind of, it generated a lot of group discussion, and people kind of got quite engaged with it, the content, I think so. Do you
I
guys,
think that'll have been the buzz test, was
the
it?
buzz test, it may well have been the buzz
Yeah.
test, yeah. Yeah, it was really
Yeah.
good. So do you guys do that a
That's the
lot?
one I use a lot.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay, cool, cool. Yeah, yeah. And I was going to ask as well, do you guys go to organizations a bit, like obviously, and kind of do those presentations like quite often?
Yeah, yeah, we do. We work with a range of training providers and further education colleges throughout the Northeast. Obviously, I've done some workshops with yourselves, which were great, because the one that I did was on transferable skills. And as
Right.
anyone who knows me well will know, that's something that I get on my soapbox about a lot, because I think if you can identify your skills, that's half the job done.
Yeah,
But yes, we do also take our roadshow, if you like, or our workshops to, companies where we may know that perhaps there's a threat or a risk of redundancy. So we can then go in and explain, usually in partnership with the DWP, to say this is what we've got to offer.
brilliant.
We've got the workshops, we've got one-to-one support, there are all the tools that you can use on the website.
Yeah,
And then what we find is that we pick up quite a lot of one-to-one appointments, if unfortunately then those redundancies do happen. They've already had that seed planted to come and interact with us, so we'll get some one-to-one interviews from those.
brilliant. Yeah, so I think that it works in on a multiple like different levels. I think so.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
that's awesome. So yeah, kind of. I think that what you mentioned there was a really good point, and that's that about transferable skills. Sometimes people don't necessarily realize the skills that they have. So that's why obviously we mentioned before
Mm,
the skills test, but when they're doing their CV, and I'm guessing if you guys are helping them with their CV, it's kind of like just like letting them know like that they have certain skills that maybe they're not even aware of, right? So
yeah, I have this conversation with my customers all the time, especially people who may have, they might have been away from the workplace for a long time because they've either been bringing up a family, and they haven't been in a position to be going to work full time. They might have been looking after a family member, being a full time carer, and they say to me, well, I haven't any skills. I've just been a housewife and a mother. Or, well, I can't do anything. I've just been looking after my mum or whatnot. And I'll say, okay, so what sort of things were you doing then? And they'll say, oh, well, I had to, I got 3 children, so I've got to get them out to school. I've got to make sure they're fed. I've got to get their school projects ready. I'm responsible for paying the bills. I've got to get the shopping in. I've got to make sure the house is clean. And I say, okay, so you've got no skills. So what about time management,
yeah, there you
organization,
go. Wow, yeah,
communicating in different ways? You're not going to
definitely.
communicate with your 8-year-old the same way as you do with, say,
Such a
your
good point.
40-odd-year-old
Yeah,
spouse.
yeah, yeah,
And they're quite amazed. And I said, but these are things, that employers are looking for.
definitely.
They can teach you processes.
Yeah,
Anyone can be taught a process, but these things that you learn about, how to make sure you've got X, Y, and Z task done by 11 o'clock,
yeah,
and no child has gone to school without their PE kit, or their lunch or their project, their Easter bonnet hat that they had to make or
yeah, yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
And that is all organization, and it's all really
Definitely.
good employee friendly skills.
Exactly, and I think that you raised several good points there, and that's a thing. It's these like a lot of people I think um don't realize certain skills they have, and it's kind of just kind of bringing that to the surface and saying that like you actually are really good at this, and
Yeah.
like some of the ones that you said there, I think that's absolutely awesome. I'm just going to catch up a little bit with the chat here because we've got quite a few people saying a few things here related to this stream. So we have let's have a quick look. Sue says that today's generation is only the first or maybe the second where jobs are no longer guaranteed. I think that it can depend. I think, but that's an interesting point from Sue there. And then let's have a look. Lisa says that. Oh, and do we have the two say? Sorry, we have one of our learners, Lynn. Is suffered a loss here, so I'm sorry to hear about that, Lynn, and my condolences for you, Lynn. So, really sorry to hear about that, and I hope that you're okay. Um, and let's see. So Lisa says that she really values how Julie always builds in highlights transferable skills, especially with those who've been out of work for a long time. She says it's so hard sometimes to blow your own trumpet. So,
Oh, it is. And I have to say that I'm very good at doing it, mainly because I played in a brass band for the past 40 odd years as
oh
well.
really?
So,
Wow.
yeah.
There you go. Can
But
I ask
that's another story.
what instrument could I ask?
I play tenor horn.
Oh wow, that's so awesome. Because I'm a huge fan of like jazz music. So I like a bit of like a
All
brass
right.
instrument now and then. So there you go. And Sue also says we tend to focus more on personal negatives than positives, and it takes another person to point out the positives sometimes, and that's
Very
really
definitely.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
And I think
definitely.
it's something that we're just not taught to do. We're not taught to blow our own trumpet and we're not taught to big ourselves up. And I think really these days you have to really know yourself and know the value of the skills that you have. And
Definitely.
I think what Sue said there is that sometimes you just need someone to sit with and kind of, reflect all of that back to you and pick out those skills. I spoke to a customer just the other day who had recently been made redundant and he'd never coped with unemployment before. And he said, oh, at my age, he, quite understandably, he was
Yeah,
concerned. And especially in this current climate. And I did say, well, it's very, very difficult for me to sit here. I can't offer guarantees about anything. But I said, from what you've told me and from the way that you've described your skills and you've described what you've done, there's such a great and strong element of leadership and
yeah, yeah,
management skills there that are proven.
definitely.
And he'd never thought of it in that way before. And he'd said, I think management caused me a lot of stress. And I said, well, from what you've told me, it sounds like the actual environment wasn't a good fit for you
Yeah,
and that there's absolutely nothing wrong with your management skills,
yeah.
but perhaps the culture of that organization was not the best fit for you.
Do you know what it is? I think that's such an interesting and a good point because I feel like when something like that happens, you need to assess all of the different factors, right? So I think
Yeah,
that people are very, are very like very critical of themselves, and it's difficult at times to consider all of the factors. So I think that's a very good point, like to consider, things other than, it's good to take ownership of stuff, but I think at the same time to kind of identify things like, okay, maybe that environment was bad, maybe so like for
yeah,
example, there's even times people could take a job and then they could think, this job's really not for me, I really don't like it, but it might
yeah.
not be the job itself, it could be the environment, it could be the management. There's so many different variables as to why that person's had a bad experience. So I think that
That's true. And I think sometimes that is the value of some of these personality tests, because very much your personality will dictate how well you thrive or don't thrive in a particular environment. And a lot of people, for example, myself included, um, when I did the buzz, and I've done the buzz and various incarnations of
yeah,
this test, which is based on an old psychological test called the Myers-Briggs personality type.
yes,
But basically, it indicates that you're either one of two main types, or you prefer to operate as either an introvert or an extrovert
hmm,
generally. Now, I am actually much more of an introvert. Now, contrary to popular belief, that doesn't mean that you're shy
mm.
or you can't talk. And obviously, you've found that I can, or that you're concerned about presenting yourself. That's actually not the case. It just means that you don't need a lot of external input, and you don't need to be surrounded by a lot of people all the time. In fact, you get
Think we've
best
there we
ideas
go.
and you have your end of space around you. So I, as you know, I worked in a very, very busy contact center. And although I absolutely loved the customer contact, what I didn't so much like was sitting surrounded by, maybe 40, 50 other people in a very, in close proximity to
Yeah,
me.
yeah.
It doesn't mean that I don't like people at all. I love customer interaction, but that environment was not the best environment for me to personally thrive in.
Definitely, and yeah, that's a good point, and I think that identifying those things that are caught, like causing those kind of workplace stresses are really important. So yeah, that I think that's a great point there. Um, we have Lynn said that it's something quite interesting in the chat. She said that she agrees with Lisa's point just before about how it's hard at times to blow your own trumpet, and she was saying that she appreciates the fact that she gets a lot of interviews. That she says, I appreciate the fact that I do get interviews because then I get to know the sort of questions that they're asking, and transferable skills was something she was pulled up on last time. So I think that that's a good point there. The fact that she's saying that she's getting interviews, because I think that's there's one way to look at it where you could say, well, I've got an interview but I didn't get the job. But then if there's a good way to kind of making that into a positive is the fact that as she said, it's that now what kind of questions they're going to ask you, how to kind of prepare for that better the next time. I think so. It's sometimes I think it's about turning a negative into a positive as well. So I think that's also a good point.
Yeah, definitely. And if you're getting a lot of interviews, then you're obviously making really good applications as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which a lot of people don't, they tend to forget.
Yeah.
But let me just say as well that I also do a lot of interview prep with people, with my
Brilliant.
customers. And we've done that either on the phone or face to face. And I have got customers some jobs from interview prep, and they've said to me, "Oh, I don't think I would have got it without you." So, I always say to my customers, we can have the first session. Normally it's face to face. Obviously it isn't, and we don't know when it will ever be face to face again.
Yeah.
But now we have a telephone appointment, and I say, okay, if you see something you'd like to apply for, if you want me to look over that application, or you want me to go through some practice interview questions with you, just let me know and we can do that together.
Brilliant. I think that's awesome. So obviously we just touched on it a bit there. What's it kind of been like since the coronavirus? How has stuff changed for you, and what are you guys doing now?
I think the biggest change has obviously been that we're now an entirely telephone-based service.
Right.
Obviously, I was in a job centre 3 or 4 days a week. My colleagues were working in other job centres. They were working at other training provider premises. And what we saw around about the second, third week of March was all of those gradually then close their doors. We did have quite a lot of customers booked in who we then had to contact and explain that obviously the job centre would no longer be accessible.
Mm-hmm.
So we would be conducting the appointment by telephone. So we had a few very busy weeks. And then what we found after that was, as you can imagine, job centres themselves, they had to review their staffing arrangements so that the ones who, were still at work had to, adhere to social distancing. Obviously, a lot of people who work in the job centres themselves were considered vulnerable and therefore had to go home and shield. And I think the setup there is, it's not as easy for them to work from home as it is for us.
Sure.
It's very easy for us to work from home because we have laptop, we have a mobile phone. So the only thing that's really missing is that face-to-face contact. So now that things have started to pick up a little bit, we're starting to get referrals through. We changed our process so that work coaches and employment advisors no longer had to make a physical phone call to us, because we understood that they were under a lot of pressure with new claims for universal credit. So we said, okay, you can just sort of email us a list of people. We will contact them, we'll arrange the appointments. But now we're seeing that things are starting to pick up. And what we're looking at, and what we're very much hoping to have ready soon, is a means by which we can take part in remote group delivery, so that we can then join in with a training provider, like yourselves, and deliver our element of the workshop, whether that's on transferable skills or whether it's on interview prep, by some sort of Zoom or Teams call. So hopefully that should be something we can look at fairly soon. But to be honest, for me, what's been really nice now is having maybe a little bit longer with my customers. Because I think now that when you're on the phone, it does tend to be with this situation as well. I think it does help you build a rapport more quickly.
Sure.
Because you can ask that obvious question of, how on earth are you managing? How's this been for you? You can swap experiences.
Yeah, exactly. There's automatically some common ground there, right? You've both experienced this pandemic at this time, so it's like definitely, I think that's quite a good point. Yeah, so it seems like you guys have been handling it pretty well, and it's great that you've been able to continue the service, obviously, because it is like such an essential service, and being able to kind of continue that via calls, I think that's great, and still able to be there to provide for people. I think that's awesome as well, and I'm really interested in that idea of kind of um, delivering virtually. I think that's quite a cool idea, and obviously
Yeah.
we're doing virtual sessions at the moment, so maybe that's something down the line. As that develops, we could look into something like that. I think because it sounds like a really cool idea.
Yes. That's really something that we'd like to do. I think it's just that, as you probably know, and again, it is a result of, because we're government funded, there is a lot of, we've got to be very, very careful about data protection
Sure.
and how we collect and use people's information. So it's that bit really that
Yeah.
we have to get right.
Yeah.
Because we've got to protect our customers. And
Sure.
anyone who's been to one of my workshops knows that, there is a lot of paperwork to fill in, and
Yeah.
details that we need to collect. So it's just about getting that right.
Yeah, that's always the necessary evil, is the kind of paperwork and the GDPR stuff and things like
Yeah,
that.
it
Yeah,
is. But we take it very, very seriously, and we've
of
got to
course.
look after our customers' information. And I
Exactly.
don't, routinely, we don't share it with other people. Obviously, it's just so that we can deliver a service. And I
Of
keep in
course, yeah.
touch with all of my customers and track them until hopefully they get where they want to be.
Brilliant. And it's good that you kind of keep in touch with them as well. So obviously they're not just like kind of feel like they've been kind of left, or they've been kind of fully like thrown into it. They've got that kind of support on deck to kind of guide them through it. So there's always someone there. So I think that's great as well, because that's obviously a massive help to a lot of people, I think.
Oh yeah, I think my customers get sick of me because I'm like, oh, I saw this job. Did you see it? And I'll email them and say, I saw this job and I thought of you.
That's
Or
awesome.
I'll send them a text and say,
Yeah,
here's a short link, get on that website.
that's great.
But I think they like it really. And sometimes I think they're a bit shocked that, I actually have kept my promise and I've kept in touch.
So could I ask Julie, do you have any advice for anybody who's out there currently struggling with employment? I know that there's a lot to kind of to say there, but is there anything in kind of in general for someone struggling with employment you can kind of think of that any
Yeah.
tips or?
Well, lots of tips, but the first thing I'd do is to book an appointment with a National Careers Service advisor, and
Brilliant.
then we can kind of help you make sense of everything. Whether that is looking at an alternative career plan, whether it's going through the jobs boards together and seeing actually, what those look like at the moment, or whether it's, maybe applying to do some online learning. And as you said, Daniel, some accredited course.
Yeah.
But the way to access that is obviously to get in touch with us, and that hasn't changed. You can still get in touch with us through the free phone helpline number.
Brilliant.
That's 0800 100 900. That is still open 7 days a week, 8 in the morning till 10 at night. Obviously, you probably won't get through to me at 9 o'clock at night, but we'll be making appointments for people through that system.
Fantastic. So just to confirm that, Julie, that's 0800 100 900.
That is, yes.
Brilliant. And I'll post that in the chat for you guys there. So if you guys are wanting to call that and book an appointment, and so yeah, Lynn's just asked there, can you book that appointment at the moment with the job centres not being open? Is that possible, Julie? Would be virtual, right?
Yeah, what happens is that obviously all the booking lines are still open. So you can just ring up the booking line, and what they'll do is that they'll put it into sort of the next free diary. So I think we've still got, and I looked in my diary, I might have 2 or 3 slots next week, but things are starting to pick up, which is really good. But yes, if you were to call, and I think our booking line are usually open till 5 every day, like the local one. So, if you wanted to book up then, they can book you into an advisor diary.
Fantastic. And then have you been getting some new clients through that, and then you're kind of introducing, and you work on it that way? Okay, brilliant.
Yes, yeah, I've talked to 4 or 5 new clients this week already, all different circumstances. And what I have been really pleased to see, though, is that when I have looked on, the usual array of job search websites, things that I couldn't have found a recent posting for 6 weeks ago are now starting to come through. So, for example, I'm seeing job adverts for plasterers, which we didn't see 6 or 7 weeks ago, we're starting to see jobs for, production managers. I think though that what if this crisis will kind of teach us anything, it'll be about the need for people who, have good problem solving skills.
For sure.
Um, and because I think that being able to, adapt your business to survive in these times. And certainly, we've had some fantastic support from Education Development Trust in fully supporting us to, go out, keep that contact with customers, redesign the telephone delivery,
Sure.
and really look at getting that group remote delivery sorted. So I think that, I suppose it's a cliche, but every challenge like this just does present a new opportunity.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think that's a really good point, and I think that another thing that I really love about it is just how much it highlighted the kind of importance of key workers in like society. I think just because in general, it's like people would maybe take for granted the interaction they have in Sainsbury's or something, or the person who those kind of people. But I think when this pandemic struck, people really kind of understood if these guys didn't work, society just would not work. So it's like these
Yeah.
people, they're really they're super important. So I think that was great, and it was good that those people getting some recognition for the the work that they do. So I think that was one of the
Yes.
things I really loved as well.
Absolutely. And I always thanked everyone, when I've been into the local supermarkets and I've said, thank you very much for everything you're doing
Yeah,
for us, and they've been really chuffed to bits that
definitely.
someone said thank you. But,
Yeah, exactly.
I wouldn't have liked to have been in their shoes, I don't think.
No, absolutely not. And it was very tough for a lot of people, and obviously there's a lot of bravery kind
Yeah.
of on display for that. And I think that all of the key workers across, from the people working in the supermarket to the people in the NHS, and it's great to kind of there's been a mutual understanding, I think, of everyone across the UK of just like what they've been doing for like these last couple of months for everybody. So I think
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah, seen some really, kind behavior and,
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
nice people supporting each other really well.
that's what we the key for like so with this podcast, well, like with this stream that we're doing currently, we've got, it's called Staying Connected, and basically on the Monday we usually have one of our learners who we'll have on, and then we'll talk to them about their experience of what they're going through, and then on a Wednesday it's just me and my colleague, and we kind of just talk about some good news, and then on a Friday we'll talk to someone from an organization. And I think it's quite a good little pattern. But the the namesake, like Staying Connected, it's that's basically so we can stay connected to our learners and just kind of promote some positive news as well, because obviously with the news cycle being so
Mm.
like it was quite intense for a lot of people for a long time, I think. So obviously we were just kind of trying to promote some positive news out there, and kind of make people keep smiling, and just let our learners and stuff know as well that we're still there as well. So that was
I think that's really important. And I think,
definitely.
you can overdo the social media and the
Oh,
news.
for sure, 100%.
And I know for my, mental and emotional health, the one thing I had to do was know when to stop looking on the BBC website for updates and when to switch off the news and think,
So true.
okay,
Oh,
this
yeah.
is doing me more harm than good at
Yeah,
the
yeah.
moment.
Well, if I found myself, like I became like quite like way too like into it at first, because it was when it was starting to go up and you could see the numbers changing every day.
Yeah,
I'll be checking all the time, and I'll start to think to myself like, it's not healthy to kind of be like
no,
this invested into it. So I was like,
no.
I totally agree with what you're saying. It's good to kind of step away from it, and not get too involved. And I mean, obviously now we are coming. We're not. I wouldn't necessarily say we're coming to the end of it, but things are starting to get better, and more things
Yeah.
are opening, and it's we're in a much better place than we were this time last month. So that's a positive to take from it.
Yeah, it really is. Yes, I mean we've seen that there has been our team at EdDev Trust are very very good at getting us current job information,
Brilliant.
and they found that some of the data that's come through from the Office of National Statistics has shown that for the first time last week there was a small increase in the number of jobs posted.
Brilliant.
Obviously, it's very much down from this point last year, but it is now starting to go up. So hopefully, we'll see that trend continue.
Brilliant. Yeah, and I feel like hopefully once this is kind of winding down more and more, and hopefully it'll get to a point, and I think that a lot of people kind of going to be motivated again, and I think that everyone's kind of had this time to kind of reflect on things, and I think that hopefully it's going to be really productive maybe I think next year, because everyone's kind of had this time and everyone's a bit eager now I think to get back. So
Yeah, and I think so as well, that it's proved that all of these jobs that people said could not be done from home
yeah,
can be done from home.
definitely.
Um,
I think that's such a good point, Julie. And I think that that's so really great, because I think from environmental standpoint, it's great, because if these jobs can be done remotely, then I think there's a lot of times when they maybe should or could be, because it's going to reduce carbon emissions and things like that
yeah,
so much. So I think that absolutely, people kind of being put in those positions where they've had to work remotely. It shows that it is effective, and we've actually obviously there's been some reports I think about people's mental health maybe suffering under lockdown, but there's also been a lot of people who have thrived really because they've been able to have their own space, and kind of
yeah.
they've been able to take time away, and kind of so I think that yeah, for some of the people working remotely, it has been a great thing, and absolutely. So I agree with your thoughts on that.
Yeah, and I've really enjoyed it, because it's for me personally, I think it's made me realize, the value of building a good relationship with my customers. I think I always tend to go maybe a little bit, I'm always a person whose appointments are running a bit over time
Sure.
because we got talking and stuff. But I've seen the benefit of that in then catching up with my customers and them remembering me, and me saying, "Yes, I remember you said you were going to do that." And oh, you remembered, you know. But
Yeah.
also the fact that I have, you know, had a lot of really good quality time to myself. I've not had to run up and down the two flights of stairs to my flat with my big heavy case with my portable printer in,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
all my kit and caboodle. And it's been rather nice actually to not have that daily commute.
yeah.
Obviously, I do miss some of the regular people that I see in the job centres, but
Definitely.
really, they're still at the end of an email or a phone. So
I totally agree. Yeah, I mean, I share very similar thoughts to yourself. Obviously, it's a commute for me to as well to work, so not having to do that, it saved me a lot of time. Obviously, but at the same time, I do share the thoughts of this office banter and stuff that you miss out on. But
yeah.
so it's yeah, I completely agree. Yes, I wanted to ask as well. Is an
Hmm.
interesting one. I'm not sure if you have any thoughts on this, but I just wanted to ask: is there any things that you shouldn't do when job hunting that you would maybe suggest? Is there anything that like are a big red flag that is like maybe a common misconception that people do a lot of, or anything that comes to mind at all?
Yes, actually, the one thing, and I see it all the time, and it's another one of my broken record moments, but do not use the same CV for every job application.
I think that's a really good one, actually. Yeah.
Especially now when, practically everything is online and we're dealing with the dreaded applicant tracking systems, which a lot of people, again, if they've been away from the workplace or they've not needed to job search for quite some time, aren't aware of the fact that when you're uploading a CV for a job,
Yeah.
in many cases, that applicant tracking system is just looking for matches between the keywords in the job spec and in your CV.
Brilliant.
And what I find time and time again is people, they're well intentioned, they want to work, and they say, "I'll do anything." And I'll say, "That's great, but it could actually be working against you because you've got a CV that it's too generic,
Brilliant.
and it's not going to match with what's on that person's spec. So you need to think about how you actually adapt that CV in each case to make it a good match and to go through the electronic sift and hopefully in front of the human who gets the next pile."
You know what it is? I think that is such good advice, because I think that a lot of people don't actually know that. So
Yeah.
yeah, just to kind of echo Julie's thoughts there, make sure that you kind of adapt your CV to the job that you're applying for, because yeah, like as you said, that's such a good point, because sometimes it's if it's not matching any of the keywords that they're scanning for in that application, then it's not even gonna get noticed.
Yeah.
it's sometimes when you look at the number of CVs that get submitted on these job sites for certain jobs,
Yeah.
it's like a lot. So yeah, if you can kind of make sure that you're catering it, because sometimes I know I can relate to the feeling. I understand if you're knocking out 10 to 20 CVs in a day, you just think, just you all do the same one, see what comes back, just throw it at the wall. But it's probably much, well, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Julie, but I think it's definitely better to take the time and to get a few in a day than to just throw loads out and just see what comes back. Because I think if you literally take the time, you customize it to the job you're applying for, your chances are going to shoot up. Would you agree with that, Julie?
I would. And what I would also say is consider maybe using a skills based CV if you are applying for a lot of different job roles. A skills CV, I don't know whether that's something that, you're aware of.
Sure.
But I've found that I use that a lot with people who, may have done, say they may have done cleaning work, they may have done care work, they
Yeah.
may have done some factory work. So really that, they'd be up for a return to any of those. But what I've said to them is, if you make your CV skills based and you, rather than focus on say work experience which doesn't show a line of progression in a particular career but rather
Point, yeah.
shows a lot of different jobs,
Yeah.
what you want to do is maybe take the focus off that and put it on the skills. And then what you can do for different skill areas is maybe just move about the the placement of those skills to match the job advert, and then you only have to rewrite your little personal profile at the top to aim that at cleaning or care or production or whatever. And that's something that I can certainly help anybody with.
So there you go, guys. I think that is also a really good point as well, kind of being able to kind of adapt it. If you feel like, well, you're at a loss of how you can put different things in, then you can actually adapt what you've got. And then I think that is also a really good idea. So that's brilliant as well, Julie. Guys, yes, we're getting towards the end there. I've just pasted the survey into the chat, so if you could please do that, guys. As you know, it takes about roughly a minute, so if you could please do that, guys, that would be a massive help to us. And yeah, I just wanted to ask as well, Julie, just a more general question. Do you have any just general lockdown advice? Anything that you've kind of been doing that's been helping you with lockdown, or anything that you think might help some of our people viewing this?
Well, really, what's helped me, and obviously everyone's different, but me being your typical introvert, I've found that the less kind of outside noise I have going on, the better.
Yeah.
So as I mentioned before, I very much limit my, TV watching, news feeds on my phone and things like that. Because what I've found is that there's this, I don't know what you think about it, Daniel, but all on the adverts and stuff, there's this big thing of, we're all in this together. And it feels like they think that we must therefore all feel the same about it. And I'm sure we don't, because I'm sure that there are some people like me who are actually coping a lot better with it, maybe because they are naturally solitary. But I think that, you've got to find your own way through. And whether that's, making time, which, what has saved me is, I talk to my mum daily, and we invented a daily quiz challenge when we couldn't see each other at all. So I would make up 3 multiple choice questions for her, and she would do the same for me. And it gave her, because she was shielding, something to do during the day. I said, right, you've got to find me these 3 questions, look in the encyclopedias, watch the chase or whatever, and have those 3 questions ready for when I ring. So it gave her kind of a point to the day and something to do. And I think for me, it's just about, keeping some sort of a routine, because I am a person who does need to be pushed. I can be quite a professional laser, really. I could lie about for England, but the more I have to do, the more I will get done. So I think, have a point to the day, even if that's just, as I said, setting some quiz questions, or whether it's saying, right, okay, I'm going to clean out the larder cupboard today, or whatever, and exercise as well, I've found has saved me.
100%.
A little jog round Roker Park, or down the front or whatever. And I found that that's helped clear my head,
Brilliant.
getting out in the fresh air, and just, but as I said, avoid the noise. I would say avoid too much news, social media. I think, there's so much misleading information as well.
So true. Yeah, there is. Yeah.
So that would be my advice anyway. Just
Yeah, I think that's great advice, guys, and just find a little bit of peace, find a bit of peace of mind, and just to get away from stuff. And I think I'm quite similar to you, Julie, in that respect. Obviously, I think as we both know that people are kind of different. There's some people who thrive off getting energy off of people, but similar to you, I like to kind of just unplug from stuff sometimes,
yeah,
and just kind of I'll create like a like a kind of peaceful. It sounds a bit crazy, maybe, but peaceful environment for myself. Like maybe like I'll light a candle and I'll kind of just sit in my room and I'll like listen to some relaxing music and then I'll read. And I feel like that just
nice.
really calms me and really relaxes me. So I think stuff like that. Find something that and as you're saying with routines and hobbies and interests, I think that's really important. Is to find something you enjoy. I know that we've got a lot of people in the chat that have got hobbies like they like really love video games or something like that. I think that if
Yeah.
you've got something which you can, it's escapism really,
Hmm.
actually, ultimately. So if you
Yeah.
can find something like a bit of escapism, I think that's really really great. And I also think exercise is another good one. Just being able to get out and do a bit of exercise can massively help. So actually, I think I wasn't actually going to do any uplifting news, but I think because it's on the lines of what we're talking about, I will just do this one, and then I think we'll save the rest for for next week. I'll kind of read this out because I know that you're not watching the stream. I don't think, Julie. So I think that
No.
on something else. So I'll read it out to you, and we can maybe talk
Okay.
about it a little bit. But basically, yeah, because it's just on the lines of what we're talking about, so I thought I'd bring it up. But it says that taking up hobbies can prevent or reduce symptoms of depression by 1/3, and it says that data came from 8,780, which is very specific, adults over age 50 in the English longitudinal study on aging, and 72% of those in the study reported having a hobby, and 15% were deemed inside the threshold for depression. So it said during this period of time, having a hobby reduced the risk of developing depression by about 30%, and the effects were observed in both men and women. And it's saying that a hobby could also be a pastime, and it can be things like arts and craft, painting, sewing, making music, carpentry, or anything like that. Or it could be, anything really that you're into. So I think that just to kind of go off what we're talking about, it shows that really having that kind of hobby, just something that you're interested in, whether it's movies or whatever it may be, can really, have pretty big impact on you. And I think because it's something you look forward to, and especially, during a time like this when you've got maybe so much more time on your hands, I think something like that is kind of good to have.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, I've actually found a new hobby. I'm not very good at it. In fact, I'm really bad at it. But I decided that I was going to try and solve cryptic crosswords. So I started with that last week.
Brilliant.
And one of the main, I won't say which newspaper, but one of the main newspapers has a good site
Sure.
where you can do crosswords online. But even with the cryptic ones, you can check them.
Brilliant.
So if you've got a hunch or you think, well, maybe this is an anagram, you can put some of the letters in and check and then see. It sounds like a strange way to do it, but sometimes I just look to say, well, will this word fit?
Yeah.
And then if it fits and it's right, I'll look back at the clue and say, okay, so how does that clue make that word?
There you go.
Which is a bit of the, putting the cart before the horse. But, I finished one. It only took me 3 days, but I finished
Wow.
one the other day.
There you
So,
go. And then the sense of achievement when you finish something like that.
oh yes, yes, I was so proud of myself.
It's awesome. Okie dokie. Right, me and Julie are about to go, but I just wanted to quickly mention a couple things people said in the chat because I thought they were pretty good. So let's see. Yes, so Sue was just saying that COVID saved her so much money. No shopping, only buying what she needs. No shopping, no using taxis. I totally agree. I've saved quite a lot as well, so that is a positive. And There was a really good question. There was a really good thing here. Oh, yes, this is it. So Lynn said as well, just another tip, employment related. She said that what she found is that if you find a job application on Indeed or something like that, she says try and find it through the company's own website if possible, and
Yeah.
then apply that way. And I think that is actually a really good tip as well.
Yes,
Um,
definitely.
Okie dokie. So I think that is about it. And Lisa was just mentioning Ray, who volunteers with it, is brilliant with cryptic crosswords as well. So I'm gonna have to look into
Ah,
that
right.
myself. So yeah, it sounds pretty fun. Okay, guys. So I think that me and Julie are gonna go. If you've got any questions, guys, I'll just give you a couple of seconds just to quickly ask. And then if not, I am gonna put up the advice helplines that we have, and I'm going to leave that up for a couple of minutes, just while me and Julie go. So, if you've got any questions, guys, and if not, we will be back on next Monday with the next Staying Connected, and we will have a learner for that. And then Wednesday, once again, with me and Haytham, and then Friday with somebody else from an organization. So, do you have anything else that you'd like to add at all, Julie? Or are you about happy with that? Or
I'm very happy. I'd just like to say, thank you to anyone who, was listening. And remember that we're still working, we're still available. We can do everything we normally do for customers, except just see them face to face. So, please give the helpline a call if you want help from me or any of my colleagues. We'd be delighted to hear from you.
absolutely perfect. Well, I think that's all, guys. I think me and Julie are going to go, but thank you so much for your time today, Julie. And yeah,
You're
we'll
welcome. Thank you.
see you later, guys. Okay.